made, and knowing that there will be a lot of work ahead of us. So I would like to open up the discussion, the podium for questions.
First, thank you, everybody.
I have a question about the ASR, more like a recording condition. Are you using a headset, or sometimes, for people, the easier way is just using a distance microphone, but you have a problem. But in the current situation, what do you want to do? I want to know this.
For PCGita recordings, which is this 50 and 50 Parkinson's and health controls, we used a bass microphone, a professional one. But for the others, we used a headset.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. For for PCGita, for the 50 healthy controls and 50 patients, we used a professional microphone on a base, and for the rest of the collections, we used a headset.
Maybe I can also add, just before the workshop, I talked to neurologists, and they strongly discouraged to use closed-talk microphones, because that was a neurologist for Alzheimer and for dementia, and she said people, as soon as they see that kind of microphone, they know they're being tested, and then they don't say anything. So what she did with her data, she just put a dictaphone on the table, so people didn't even see it, and recorded that. And I think closed-talk microphone is probably not. You'd be better off with worse acoustic conditions than using a closed-talk microphone.
Yeah, but there is another point, a little bit in favor of the headsets, and that is with Parkinson's people, as you saw in the video that I showed. Sometimes they cannot control the movement of their arms, so they knock the table or they move the microphone. So in that case, it's better to have a headset. So it's a compromise.
Some of the ASR performance is not kind of how to say like what we always observe, like a little bit worse than the others. So that's maybe the reason of that kind of condition, or what is the kind of condition of the reason of this?
So I think some of the data, so for example the cookie theft data, it wasn't recorded for ASR purposes. So it's been recorded with a tabletop microphone, but some years back, so the noise levels are very variable, and they're pretty terrible for some of them. So I think all new recordings, of course, will be much better. So I'm also doing recordings at the moment just with a sort of a journalist type dictaphone you put on the table, which is okay. And just in terms of making it friendly, like we have a sort of a video camera that's kind of developed for schools, so it looks a bit like a microphone than this. So again, it looks very friendly, and people don't feel threatened by it. So I think that's quite important. So I think we will see on newer data recorded, you can definitely have better ASR, but we're always finding that. For example, the conversations I've looked at where you compare the neurologist, so the doctor, with the ASR performance for the patient, and that's a huge difference. So even under the same acoustic conditions, they're just not a very good match for the typical ASR models because of the way they speak, the hesitations, the pauses. So I think you could do a lot to just tune your system to better cope with that.
Just having improved age-matched recognizer acoustic models will help, but the other thing is, especially with the Alzheimer, the language model is just not very good. It's just worse, and that explains a lot. There was a question over there. the question is, are we going to go towards the completely with ASR? Well, some of the experiments we did not use ASR, number one. And we did show that we can get decent results with acoustic analysis per se. I don't think to go towards the... There is so much data out there of dedicated tests that is transcribed, and we should definitely use that. I think one of the things we did show was that you can use these to improve the models, and it also helped for the monologues. So when we did the experiments with the word recognition on the Parkinson, and then went to the at-home recordings, the word error rate was quite decent. So I think, of course, by using better acoustic models from elderly people, our recognizers nowadays are not so good for elderly people. By using better models you can already improve the baseline, and then what is promising is that you can improve with the read sentences and with the transcribed stuff that is out there to improve. But obviously, you know, when it comes to large data collections, you can't sit down and transcribe that.
So I just want to add on the privacy thing. So I think often these days you will find anyway, if you're recording stuff in people's homes, you don't want to be sending back the full audio, so you will anyway be encoding it in the home and extracting features. So transporting MFCCs is probably a better way around that. And I think we have even the results that Frank showed in the beginning with quite severe word error rates. There is still something to be kind of gained from that. So I think we'll be not very keen to let go of it.
I guess one way to characterize Shiv's question is to say, for the kind of analysis that you need to do, there were some parts that relied on having a transcript, even if it was something like we're forced alignment to get the duration of the pauses, or I can't remember, a few other features like that, which were predicated on having a reference transcript. So if this were going to be scaled up and deployed, then you'd have to replace the reference transcript with some kind of automatic transcript. So I guess the question is, do you really need the automatic speech recognition to give you high accuracy transcripts, or are the features you need sufficiently or weakly related to the transcript being accurate so that you could still get them out of it? So for example, if Nikolai is saying, if you just want to know pause durations between words when you're reading these name lists, or if you're looking at filled pauses, then that's not the same thing as requiring very high accuracy ASR. So I don't know if Shiv was going there, but the question was, how much do you rely on transcripts, and how much could these results be replicated if all transcripts everywhere were replaced by the best available speech recognition we have, however bad it might be?
Well, I think it's sure that the performance will drop, but not, I mean, you can still do well. Yeah.
I would say two things. So one is, unobtrusive monitoring will not replace dedicated tests. If my monitoring says there might be something wrong, I could call them up and could say, did you take your medication, or it could pre-stage, you know, if the Alzheimer person seems to behave very different, pre-stage the next medical checkup or so. Or I could call and have a checkup. And the other thing is that if we have over a long time data collections of where people describe certain pictures, these pictures could be labeled by the son or the daughter and saying, you know, this is the mother, and then you can look for, does it say, does the person recognize her own mother or not? So and I think many of these things can also be used with imperfect word recognition. We did show, Frank did show and did present that you get worse with imperfect recognition, but even with a very high error rate, you can still get results quite significantly over change. So I think over chance. So I think, number one, we will always have situations where we know what the person says, and number two, for the situations where we don't know that, we have classifiers that don't use word recognition, and we have shown that erroneous recognition degrades the recognition results, but it doesn't completely go berserk.
Yeah, one of the things Iris Murdoch is known for is not having a lot of intervention when she published her works. There is a noticeable decline in the variance of the language, and that's why there is a lower perplexity. Her language is more predictable. And what is the other part of the question? Oh, yeah. Okay, so for the way we use perplexity, we built two different models. The way it worked on the novels of Iris Murdoch, they built a single model for each book, and that was used to see the variance in the language. So they used the simpler language in the book. In the books where she had early onset dementia, they were more predictable. But for our task, we used two different models, Alzheimer's and control, and we found overall that the Alzheimer's model is less predictable. So there's more variance, and this is for the cookie task.
No, but I guess Molly's question, I thought, is that there is more variability perhaps when you're trying to do something spontaneously, whereas you're going to sit down and carefully compose.
I think one has to see with Iris Murdoch's work. You take her book, you take 9/10, and you train a language model with those 9/10, and then you test on the other 10, and you on the other 10th, and you do that randomly round robin. So each predictability is for that book, and what you see is that the predictability decreases, so the perplexity rises, and then she has at the height of her work, and then she slowly decreases, and that decrease is due to the effect of dementia. So within her book, she is more predictable. Now, when it comes to the language models that Nikolai used for his experiments, he took all the stories of the, again leaving a certain test set out. He took the stories of other persons, how they would describe, and then say how much can I predict from these other persons the story of a control or a dementia person. So if you take the control group, you will not have somebody saying the father is not in the picture, because the control people did not do that. The Alzheimer people did do that, so that with the control language model, the predictability is actually higher, not like in Murdoch's case where the predictability decreased with the influence of Alzheimer.
So the Alzheimer's models is between subjects or between people as opposed to within? So
Yes. Iris Murdoch was within one novel.
Right, so you think that explains the difference?
Yes.
It's not the writing.
No. No, I don't think so.
There's a lot of stuff we didn't cover today. One of the things we didn't cover was work on analyzing discourse structure in spontaneous speech and written novels, and it turns out that there's actually a difference between how useful discourse relations are in spontaneous speech versus novels. So things like summarization and repetition happen a lot in spontaneous speech, and they don't happen that much in novels. And it's much easier to tell somebody with Alzheimer's from someone without Alzheimer's disease if you're doing discourse analysis on speech as opposed to text. So that's the paper we're going to be submitting in the next few days.
And I guess guess the other way to see if this is indeed contradictory or consistent with Iris-Murdoch is to get longitudinal data, to get people describing the same cookie scene or whatever it is over a period of 5, 10, 15 years to see if their predictability in describing a picture goes down or up as time passes.
That's an open question also, because sometimes there's learning effects with regard to some pictures, and we want to see how far apart we should be showing the same picture versus different pictures.
Right. You need healthy controls to track the learnability part of it and factor it out.
Yeah, and also Alzheimer's disease is actually something that takes about a decade to run its full course, and sometimes, even though a lot of the parameters can turn up years before diagnosis, it's still relatively slow. So a lot of the longitudinal variation is actually over short periods of time. So in order to get, we want to record people every few weeks or something because we want to account for that variational change over time in the short term.
I have another question. This is, I don't know who to address it to, but the question was translatability. I mean, can we take these findings and what is the path to somebody adopting them and making them useful, and what do physicians care about? You can ask about it both ways. You can say, if they could have us do anything they want for them, what would they have us do for them? Whether or not we can do it. And the other way around, all these findings, especially things like, oh, look at the pause durations, they are insignificant or whatever. Is that something that informs them, or is that something they already knew? I mean, is this data revealing new things that they didn't know? So what does information flow from us to them? How does it flow from them to us?
I think one of the important things is that if they say, why do you say this guy has worsened? You cannot come and say the 13th MFCC is changing. So it's got to be parameters that they can follow up. That's always important. The other thing is, sometimes the neurologists don't even have an idea about this. So I talked to the neurologist who showed me the fluency task, and she had the handwriting stuff, and it was, it was somebody getting his doctorate, and she interviewed so many people with dementia, and had the list of the animals, and then she said, okay, I can show that they have significantly less animals named. And I said, yeah, but what if I can give you the pausing information? I mean, it's like, if a person with dementia maybe starts and shooting out 4 or 5 animals, and then there's a short pause, then comes another 2, and then there's a long pause, and then comes another one, and the control give you the same amount of animals just with more constant pauses. And she says, oh, that would be super. Is that possible? So I think that we need really the conversation with the specialists, and to say, we can model this like a second opinion. We can model your test, just run with an automatic test, and it can confirm, it highly correlates with your results, but we can also show you up new paths, new things that you don't think of. And she just, she said, it would be great to have that, but my doctoral candidate couldn't do that because she was so busy writing down all the animals. So I think both things has to be. We have to convince them that, number one, we can, with a high correlation, repeat some of the automatic, some of the hand analyses, and thus have a cheap second opinion. And on the other hand, we can show them, we can open up something. We can give you information that you would not have without the technology. Okay, as I said, when I used my phone, I didn't even realize the damn thing was running. You know, it was running. It just recorded. But let's assume that I really have this app, and your phone has so much information about you. So if you look at somebody with depression, the literature says that activity reduces depression. Your phone, if you have your phone with you, you know how much you walk. It's easy from the census to say he's in a bus or he's walking. And to have statistics like, you know, with the phone in his pocket, he has moved so much during a day, and then look for a decline or a change and a reminder, or hey, you know, you haven't taken a walk in a long time, just as a short SMS, or that, I think there is many people who will appreciate that. Stuttering, the same thing. You know, you come. One of the projects I had in the last 3 years was stutterers. They go to therapy, and the stuttering improves significantly. Over time, when they forget what they learned in therapy, it will slowly increase the stuttering event. And that's exactly what the guys say, you know. You come out of therapy, you're much better, and then it slowly increases. So a certain reminder, because, you know, you yourself, you don't realize it that much. As a person with depression, you don't know, oh, I walked 5 Ks less on average during this week than during last week. As a stutterer, oh, my stuttering increased. You don't know that, and there's a lot of self-denial. So I bet there's a lot of people out there, and it will not work for everybody. Just like physical activity will not work for everybody with depression, but for many, it will work, and they will be thankful to get a reminder, hey, I noticed you haven't. And the other thing is, when you come to your doctor, and he's going to say, so did you keep your physical activities up? He's going to say yes, whether he did it or not. Because he's in the situation where, you know, you don't want to admit, hey, I was a lazy and I was sitting in the couch all day. So he's going to say that. But this thing can tell him, oh, he did reduce his physical activities, even though he's telling me the wrong thing. So I think it will be a helpful thing. And if you don't, if you forget that you're having it, then that's a good sign.
I just want to say, in practice, there's this award-winning startup company that is working on very similar technology to this, but instead of inferring MMSE and other cognitive scores, they're inferring like the neuropsychiatric inventory and the geriatric depression scale, but basically using picture analysis to make their assumptions. The idea there is that, you know, clinicians or nurses or caregivers can look at the sorts of changes that we're talking about here, but over a short term. That's what they're really interested in, because MMSE is basically always going to decline in Alzheimer's disease, but you can do something about changes to NPI. So they're doing really wonderful work. They're called Winterlight Labs. So there you go. The NPI, GDS, like a kind of neuropsychiatric changes, things you can actually treat.
So we really would have liked to look at the effect of dementia and depression, because it is one of the things. And we looked carefully at some of the new data, the CCC data, whether there was enough of an overlap in the conditions there. But unfortunately, we didn't have the data for that, because we don't really know whether many of the things we're picking up in the acoustic signal really is because people are also depressed. Having said that about people, whether they would like to be monitored. So one of the problems that clinicians have at the moment is that people don't really want to go to the doctor if they think they've got dementia, because at the moment people know that there isn't much treatment. So what happens is that people go and see the doctor when the people they live with, their family, start getting really concerned about them. And so they come way too late. So hopefully, you know, in the next decade there will be treatment and people will be happier to come earlier. In terms of whether people are worried about being monitored, I think for some of these people, it's not what's first on their mind. So I think they'll be quite happy to. I mean, as long as the privacy is sorted, I think they'll be fairly happy to. Yeah.
Like my mom is doing the good things and is concerned that's kind of, you know.
Yeah. yeah. I mean, it would be nice to. Yeah, yeah, yes. Of course, you worry about the day that Abby's going to tell you, well, I would, book an appointment with my doctor. But yeah, I think, it is nice to be monitored. It's like, having glasses or something. You quite like to go every half year to just double check things out, how they should be.
Thank you, Elmar. Thank you, everyone.